Sometimes the only way to be chased is to stop running. Let that sit with you for a moment, my friends. That one sentence flips the whole story upside down. We've been taught that if you love someone, you fight for them. That if someone pulls away, you chase harder. But what if I told you that chasing isn't love? It's fear. Fear of being left. Fear of not being enough. Fear of silence. The truth is, silence is the very thing that brings clarity. It's not weakness, it's power wrapped in calm. You've been running after someone who was walking away, giving more while getting less, holding the rope on both ends while they barely gave you a thread. And now you're tired of wondering, what more can I do? When the real question should have been, why am I doing so much for someone who's doing so little? That, folks, is the lie we need to burn. The lie that effort always wins love. No, it doesn't. Effort wins love when it's mutual, when it's reciprocated, when the other person is also reaching for you, not retreating from you. Letting go is not a loss, it's a strategy. It's a shift in energy. You stop trying to convince them. Stop explaining your worth. Stop handing out second chances like candy on Halloween. And suddenly, things change. That silence they once ignored now echoes. The space they once took for granted now feels like a canyon. People rarely value what is always available, but they obsess over what they can no longer reach. Think of this like a fire. If you keep feeding it, it burns steady. But the moment you take away the wood, the oxygen, the fire starts panicking. It flickers, shrinks, and tries to pull from what's left. That's them. They were warmed by your love, your loyalty, your attention. And when you pull it all away, when you stop fueling their ego, they start to feel the cold. They begin to realize maybe you weren't the one who needed them. Maybe they were the ones who had it good and blew it. Have you ever noticed how people suddenly realize your value after you've moved on? They act brand new, as if it took your silence to see your soul, but they saw it. They just didn't believe you'd ever stop showing up. They thought your love had no end, that your kindness had no limits, that no matter what they did, you'd still be there, replying to texts, overthinking the silence, hoping for a sign. But not anymore. Now, let's be clear, this isn't about revenge. This isn't about playing games. This is about pulling your energy back so that it can feed your own soul. It's about switching the focus from how do I win them back to how do I win myself back? Because when you truly let go, not out of anger, but out of clarity, they feel it. Not in a maybe they're mad kind of way, but in a they're actually done kind of way. That's the power shift. That's when they start crawling back, not because you begged them to, but because your absence started doing what your words never could. So don't be afraid to walk away. Don't be scared to go silent, because silence isn't a punishment, it's a message. It says, I don't need to prove anything anymore. It says, I'm done repeating myself to someone who already made their choice. And that message hits harder than any speech you could have given. Let go, walk away, and watch. Just watch how the same person who thought you'd always be there starts to circle back, confused, regretful, craving the access they used to have. But by then, you'll be too far gone, too evolved, too focused, because letting them go wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the best version of you. Say it with me, I let go. Write it in the comments, bold, clear, proud. Let the world know. And if this hit you where it needed to, press that like button. Subscribe if you're done chasing and ready to become the person they never thought would walk away. Stay with me, folks. We're just getting started. First, letting go isn't giving up, it's rising up. As the saying goes, you only lose what you cling to. Let that sink in, my friends, because most of the pain you've been feeling didn't come from losing them. It came from holding on, clutching, hoping, begging the universe to make something last that was already breaking apart in your hands. You weren't defeated when they left. You were defeated the moment you started believing that letting go meant failure, that silence meant weakness, that walking away meant you didn't love them enough. But what if I told you that's the biggest lie you've ever been sold? We've been conditioned to believe that real love means staying no matter how heavy it gets, that you prove your worth by how long you hold on. But let's challenge that. Picture this. You're holding water in your palm, a tight grip, fingers clenched. The harder you squeeze to keep it from slipping through, the faster it leaks out. Why? Because you can't hold something fluid by force. You can't grip peace, you can't squeeze loyalty. The more you try to possess it, the more it resists. And love? Love's the same. If it's real, it doesn't need to be forced. If it's mutual, it doesn't have to be begged for. But here's where it gets raw, folks. Letting go doesn't just mean walking away. It means walking away without answers, without closure, without the apology you were owed but never got. That's the part they never tell you, that letting go will feel like breaking your own heart just to stop them from breaking it again. And it'll feel like defeat at first, because everything inside you wants to hold on just a little longer. Just one more message, one more, maybe they'll change. One more, maybe they'll realize. But what if they don't? What if the version of them that you keep hoping will show up only exists in your imagination? What if you've been clinging to the potential of who they could be instead of facing the reality of who they are? That's the dangerous part about potential. It'll keep you trapped in a waiting room while your self-worth rots away. Letting go isn't easy. No one said it would be. You'll ask yourself 1,000 times, did I give up too soon? What if I just held on a little longer? Was it really that bad? And the answer is simple. If it cost you your peace, your self-respect, your dignity, it was already too expensive. If you had to become a watered-down version of yourself just to keep them, then you weren't in a relationship. You were in a prison. You didn't come here to be halfway loved. You didn't wake up this morning to be an option. And if you think that holding on will eventually convince them to love you better, ask yourself this. If they haven't seen your worth by now, what else are you waiting for? A miracle, a personality transplant. You can't heal in the same place that broke you. You can't rise while you're still anchored to someone who never wanted to fly with you in the first place. Letting go isn't giving up, it's rising up. It's standing up inside your own mind and saying, I deserve better, even if I have to walk alone for a while to find it. That's not weakness, that's power. That's self-respect finally kicking in. And let me tell you something, when you let go with peace in your heart and fire in your eyes, the energy shifts. That absence, that distance becomes louder than anything you ever said to them. Suddenly they feel it. Not just the silence, but the stillness, the knowing, the calm. The storm has passed, and it's not coming back for them. They thought you'd beg, that you'd stay on standby, but instead, you disappeared with dignity. You turned your pain into purpose. You stopped chasing and started choosing yourself. And now they feel the void, not because you screamed, but because you went silent. Not because you exploded, but because you evolved. My friends, your healing began the moment you stopped reaching, the moment you took your hand back, the moment you looked around and said, I don't need to convince anyone to love me. I'm not for sale. I'm not a bargain. That shift is when you start to rise. That's when you realize you never needed them to complete you. You just needed the courage to stop clinging to what was crumbling. And yes, it'll hurt. There will be nights you want to go back. Days when your mind plays highlight reels of the good memories while conveniently muting the bad. But that's okay. That's normal. Just don't unpack there. Don't mistake nostalgia for a reason to return. Memories are not invitations. They're reminders. And the version of you that stayed too long needed to exist so the version of you that walks away could be born. Letting go will feel like falling at first, like you're free-falling with no safety net. But the truth is, you are the net. You are the ground you land on. You're not breaking, you're breaking free. That feeling in your chest, that's not emptiness, that's space. And space is where your healing begins. Say it with me. I rise by releasing. Say it again so your heart believes it. Now go write it in the comments. Type it with purpose. Let them see it. Let yourself see it. Show the world that you're no longer clinging to what hurts. You're releasing to rise. And if this section lit something in your chest, press that like button. Subscribe if you've ever mistaken holding on for strength. Stay with me, folks, because the next part only gets more powerful from here. Number 2, they couldn't see your worth when you were right there. Let's call it what it is, my friends. Disrespect in disguise. You weren't invisible. You were just so consistent, so emotionally available, so present that they stopped noticing. You were like oxygen, always there, always giving, always flowing. And just like oxygen, they didn't think twice about you until you were gone, until their chest started to tighten, until the silence hit, until the room got cold and empty and the air stopped moving. That's when it hit them. That's when they realized they needed you. But by then, you had already walked out the door. They left wide open. This is what they don't tell you about being a loyal, good-hearted person, that your consistency can become invisible, that your kindness gets mistaken for desperation, that showing up every day with love, patience, and forgiveness gets twisted into they'll never leave. You gave your all, and somehow they saw it as too much, too intense, too emotional, too clingy. When the truth is, you were just real in a world that rewards emotional distance and punishes vulnerability. You weren't weak, you weren't needy, you were present, you were steady. You showed up when it mattered, and instead of meeting you there, they floated in and out as if it was optional. You became their comfort zone, the emotional safety net they thought would never disappear, and they confused your availability with a lack of value. Why? Because people often don't appreciate what they don't have to fight for. They don't question the air they breathe. But take that air away, and suddenly every breath becomes a battle. Let me ask you something real. How many times did you shrink your emotions just to keep the peace? How often did you convince yourself not to speak up, not to rock the boat, not to seem too invested, just so they wouldn't pull away? You were walking on eggshells in a room you built, giving them space while suffocating in your own silence. And still, they didn't see you. But here's the twist, folks. Your absence changed everything. The moment you stopped explaining, stopped texting, stopped showing up, the script flipped. Now you're not the predictable one. You're not the emotional cushion. You're not the therapist, the cheerleader, or the fire extinguisher for their chaos. You're just gone. And now they feel the weight of what they lost. Not because they suddenly evolved, but because the thing they took for granted has gone missing. And what's missing gets magnified. It's wild, isn't it? How your silence suddenly makes you valuable. How the same person who once made you feel like too much now misses the very love they called overwhelming. How they scroll through old messages, replaying the words they never really listened to when they had the chance. How they hover over your profile, wondering what you're doing, who you're with, and whether they still matter. That's what happens when oxygen disappears. The world gets smaller, tighter, harder to breathe in. But let's be honest, they didn't change because they saw your worth. They changed because they felt your absence. Big difference. Because if someone has to lose you just to see you, they never truly looked in the first place. And that's not love. That's dependency, comfort, entitlement. You were never the problem. You were the solution they abused until it stopped working. This isn't your punishment, my friend. This is your promotion, because now you know your worth isn't tied to how often you're needed. It's defined by how much you value yourself, even when no one else seems to. And the most powerful thing you can do right now? Stay gone. Don't go back to prove a point. Don't respond to the breadcrumbs. Don't let nostalgia trick you into returning to a place where your soul was starving. Your value isn't up for debate anymore. You're not just someone's good enough for now. You're not the placeholder while they figure their life out. You're not someone they get to remember only when they feel empty. You are oxygen. You are life-giving. If someone didn't know how to breathe you in when you were there, they don't deserve a second chance when they start to suffocate. Say it with me. My absence speaks value. Now write it in the comments. Say it like you're done explaining, done begging, done waiting. Let them feel what you finally realized, that being taken for granted was never your fault. It was your final lesson. Number 3, your detachment is their wake-up call. As our legend Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And my friends, that quote is a mirror of what they're feeling right now. Not because you yelled, not because you lashed out, but because you didn't. Because you didn't say anything at all. No paragraphs, no late-night explanations, no emotional outbursts. Just silence, just distance, just a calm they never saw coming. And that silence, it's driving them mad. That calm is a storm in their mind because your detachment wasn't noise. It was a wake-up call. You used to be the one reacting, overthinking, waiting by the phone, heart racing every time they left you hanging. You used to be the one who gave them emotional certainty, always replying, always showing up, always explaining what you felt, why you felt it, and what they needed to do differently, but not anymore. Something in you shifted, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. When that shift happened, they noticed. See, when you're always reactive, they know where they stand. They know how to push, how to pull, how to trigger the version of you that stays stuck in a loop. But when you stop reacting, they lose control. You stop feeding their ego. You stop validating their games. You stop being the predictable source of energy they thought would never run dry. And suddenly, they're the ones left wondering. Imagine this from their side. Now they send a message. Nothing. They post something baiting your attention. Silence. They try to create distance, hoping you'll chase. But this time, you don't. You stay still. And in that stillness, their imagination does what your words never could. It haunts them. Because now they're sitting in the exact confusion they used to put you in. Replaying moments, overanalyzing, wondering if you've moved on, if you've replaced them, if you ever even cared at all. And here's the twist. They're not afraid of losing you. They're afraid they already did. That's what detachment does. It doesn't scream, it echoes, it doesn't punish, it reveals. When you detach, you're no longer arguing, no longer fighting to be seen. You're not trying to fix anything, you're focused on yourself. And that sudden shift, that new silence, speaks a language they can't decode. It's unfamiliar, and people fear what they don't understand. You used to pour your soul into them. Now you pour into your peace. You used to explain your feelings. Now you protect your energy. While you may still feel the sting of walking away, trust this, they feel it too. Maybe not in public, maybe not in front of their friends, but late at night when the show is over and the mask comes off. That's when your absence hits. Not because you made a scene, but because you made a decision. And let's not forget, detachment is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. You're not bitter, you're just done. You're not punishing them, you're protecting yourself. And believe me, nothing flips the dynamic faster than emotional neutrality. When someone realizes they no longer have emotional access to you, they panic. They spiral. They scramble to understand what changed, when it changed, and if they can still get back in. But the door is locked. The energy is gone. The game is over. Let me hit you with something deep, folks. When someone loses the version of you who used to chase, they're not missing you. They're missing the control they had over your emotions. They're not heartbroken over the connection. They're heartbroken over the fact that you stopped being predictable, that you're no longer manageable. And that realization cuts deep because people don't expect the emotionally available one to ever detach. But when you do, it shakes their entire foundation. You've become the mystery now. You're no longer the open book. They can't skip to the last page anymore. They don't know what you're thinking, how you're feeling, or whether you're still watching. And that unknown becomes a mental prison because you gave them a taste of your consistency. Now, the silence is like withdrawal. They don't know how to handle it. And that's exactly how you reclaim your power. So keep detaching, let the silence speak, let the calm confuse. Because your peace is no longer on the table. You're not here to explain your silence to someone who never appreciated your presence. You've moved into a new season, a season of clarity, a season of growth, a season where your emotional energy is reserved for people who earn it. Say it with me. My calm is power. Now go write it in the comments. Let them feel it. Let yourself feel it. Let the world know that you've traded chaos for calm. In doing so, you found a strength they never expected. Number 4, letting go forces them to sit with their choices. Let's get something straight, my friends. When you finally let go, you're not being cruel. You're being clear. You're not abandoning anyone. You're just stepping out of the way and letting them feel the weight of their own actions. And that's exactly what they never expected. You were the cushion, the comfort, the emotional airbag that softened every blow they created. And now that you're gone, they're hitting the floor hard. No more soft landings, no more gentle explanations, no more rescuing them from the chaos they created. It's wild, isn't it? How they only start reflecting after the damage is done. But that's the thing. Reflection rarely happens in comfort. It happens in discomfort. It happens in silence, in the emptiness left behind. When your energy is no longer there to fill the room, you were their safe place, their emotional backup plan. They didn't just take you for granted. They depended on you not to leave. They relied on your empathy, your forgiveness, your soft heart to clean up messes they never intended to fix. You were the emotional janitor of their life, always sweeping up their bad decisions, always helping them save face. But not anymore. You've let go. You've stepped back. And for the first time, they have to sit in the mess alone. No lifeline, no voice of reason, no hand to pull them out. And now they're finally seeing the consequences, not just feeling the regret, but being forced to live in it. That's what happens when you stop cushioning the fall. They don't just trip, they crash. And in that crash comes clarity. They'll start asking themselves the questions they never bothered to consider before. Why did they really leave? Did I take them for granted? Was I too cold? Did I mess this up? And the answer to all those questions is yes. But they couldn't hear it when you were still explaining. They couldn't see it while you were still available. Because when someone knows you'll always be there to soften the impact, they never fear falling. But when you're gone, every decision suddenly matters. Every misstep becomes real. They used to disappear for days and come back like nothing happened. Gaslighting, breadcrumbing, ignoring, and then acting surprised when you brought it up. And you gave grace again and again. You gave understanding, you gave excuses, you gave effort. And what did they give? Just enough to keep you close, but never enough to meet you fully. That's the cycle you broke when you walked away. And your silence, it's not just quiet, it's consequence. Now, let's be real. Part of you probably still wonders if they get it, if they're actually sitting there thinking about everything they did wrong. And here's the honest truth. They are. Even if they'll never admit it, even if they post like nothing's wrong, even if they pretend they're unbothered. Behind all of that is a mind reeling from the shift in dynamic because your detachment flipped the script. You're no longer emotionally available, you're no longer predictable, and that unknown is tormenting them in ways your words never could. They're not texting you, not because they don't care, but because they're afraid of what they might hear, afraid you won't reply, afraid you're really done, afraid you've outgrown them. And they should be, because this is what happens when you teach someone how to treat you and they ignore the lesson. They get the consequence. They get the cold reality of what happens when someone who truly cared walks away for good. Letting go isn't about teaching them a lesson. It's about teaching yourself a lesson, that you're no longer willing to be hurt in slow motion just to keep someone comfortable, that your peace matters more than their confusion, that saving someone from themselves is not your job when they don't even want to be saved. And here's the wildest part. They needed this fall. They needed to hit the bottom without you there to break it, because only in that fall can they finally see just how much they relied on your presence. Your love wasn't weak. It was powerful. It held them up when they didn't deserve it. And now that it's gone, they're not just hurting, they're exposed. Say it with me. Let them fall. Say it again with certainty, with peace, with power. Now go write it in the comments. Type it loud. Let them see. Let yourself feel it. You're done cushioning what was meant to crash. Number 5, the energy shift they never expected. Something changed, didn't it? Something shifted, not in them, but in you. And now they can feel it, even if they can't explain it. You used to be the one chasing, the one reaching, the one responding to their breadcrumbs with full-course meals of love, attention, and patience. You used to be the one breaking your own boundaries just to keep the peace, but not anymore. That version of you is gone, and in its place stands someone they don't know how to reach anymore, someone they never expected, someone unavailable. You're not reacting like you used to, not feeding into their games, not responding to their little tests for attention, the passive-aggressive posts, the silence, the accidental messages ignored, the likes on your story after weeks of ghosting you, nothing. No rise, no reply, no emotional fireworks. And that, my friends, is driving them absolutely insane. You see, people get addicted to patterns, and when your pattern was being emotionally available, always reaching out first, always fixing things, always being the bigger person, they got comfortable. They expected it. They depended on it. You were their emotional rhythm. And now that rhythm has stopped, their entire sense of control is unraveling. They're sitting there staring at their phone, wondering, why aren't they reacting? Why aren't they checking on me? Did they move on? Did someone else take my place? That's the storm you've created with your silence. That's the chaos your peace is causing. They thought you'd always be that soft place to land, that no matter what they did, you'd be there, available, forgiving, patient. But they never noticed that while they were taking you for granted, you were changing, quietly, slowly, powerfully. You were shifting your energy from begging to building, from chasing to choosing, from proving your worth to protecting it. They don't know how to handle this new version of you, because this version, you're not here to argue. You're not explaining why you're hurt. You're not justifying your silence. You're not opening your door just because they finally decided to knock. You've become calm, focused, disconnected, not in a toxic way, but in a healed way, in a I'm not entertaining nonsense anymore way. And that's terrifying to someone who fed off your emotional availability. Let me put it to you like this. They were playing a game they thought they controlled, but you took the ball, walked off the field, and built a new game, one they weren't invited to. Now they're outside the arena watching, desperate to figure out the new rules. But the truth is, there are no more rules because you're not playing anymore. That's the power of the energy shift. You didn't scream. You didn't announce it. You didn't make a scene. You just stopped. Stopped feeding what wasn't growing. Stopped giving to what was draining you. And now you've become unreachable, not because you're hiding, but because you've elevated. And here's the part that hits them the hardest. They're starting to crave the version of you they once dismissed. The overlover, the peacekeeper, the soft heart they treated like a doormat. That energy is gone. That love is pulled back. That presence is unavailable. They don't get the old you, not because you're cruel, but because they didn't cherish it when it was theirs. Now they sit in a loop, replaying moments, regretting, reaching out energetically, hoping you'll break character and come running back. But you don't, because that energy isn't yours anymore. It's being used to build something better, to grow something stronger, to become someone unstoppable. Say it with me. My energy has shifted. Say it again with calm, with clarity, with conviction. Go write it in the comments. Let them feel what they lost. Show yourself what you've become. Show the world that the new you isn't angry. You're just unavailable. Number 6, when you stop explaining, they start wondering. They were used to the script, weren't they? The back and forth, the explanations, the emotional playbook you kept handing them, page after page, hoping one day they'd finally read it with care. You'd explain why you were hurt, why their silence was cutting you, why their hot and cold behavior left you feeling like you were chasing a shadow. You'd pour your heart out line after line, thinking maybe this time they'll understand. But they never did, because they didn't need to. They were comfortable, and comfort never listens. But then one day, you stopped. You stopped explaining, stopped justifying, stopped writing emotional essays to someone who couldn't even give you a real response. You went quiet. You disappeared from the conversation, not physically, but energetically. And that silence, that unknown, started echoing louder than any message you ever sent. Because now, for the first time, they don't know what you're thinking. And that mystery, it's eating them alive. See, when you were explaining yourself, they felt in control. They knew the script. They knew the beats of the song. But now, you've gone off script. You've become unreadable, unpredictable. And that uncertainty, that lack of access to your inner world, is haunting them. They wonder, are you mad? Have you moved on? Are you waiting for me to reach out? Are you done forever? And you? You're not answering. Not because you're playing games, but because you're done playing yourself. You're not feeding them your emotions anymore. You're not making their comfort your responsibility. You're not helping them sleep at night while you stay up battling your overthinking. You finally realized that every time you explained yourself, you were giving them another chance to misunderstand you, to twist your truth into a weapon, to turn your vulnerability into control. And the moment you stopped, you broke the cycle. Let's be real. Some people don't miss you. They miss the power they had when they could trigger a reaction from you. And when that reaction disappears, they start to panic. Because people don't chase what they understand. They chase what confuses them, what eludes them, what they can't figure out. And right now, that's you. You've become the question mark in their story, the line they can't finish, the echo they can't silence. They replay your last message, reread your old texts, hover over your name, unsure what to do. But the one thing they won't do is admit they're confused. So they'll pretend, act unbothered, drop a subtle post like your story just to see if you'll break the silence. But you don't, because silence isn't a game. It's a boundary. It's a statement. It's the wall that stands where your dignity now lives. And from this place, you don't need to explain yourself to someone who was never listening. Anyway, you don't need to clear the air for someone who kept breathing just fine while you were suffocating. Let me give you a metaphor, my friends. Imagine a radio station that used to play your favorite song on repeat. One day, it just stops. No announcement, no warning, just static. You keep tuning in, trying to catch a note, a beat, something to tell you it's still there, but it's not. That silence, that static, it becomes addictive. You start wondering, did they move on? Did I do something? Is it really over? That's what they're feeling now because your emotional radio went silent, and now the noise in their head has begun. This is where your power lives, not in words, but in withdrawal, not in reaction, but in restraint. You're not seeking revenge, you're just reclaiming your peace. And in doing so, you've become the unsolved mystery, the puzzle they can't piece together, the question that keeps them up at night. Say it with me. My silence speaks. Now write it in the comments. Let it echo. Let it be seen. Let them wonder while you walk in peace. You've done enough explaining. Now it's time to just be. Number 7, they come back when you no longer need them. As the legend Lao Tzu once said, silence is a source of great strength. And my friends, that's exactly what you've tapped into. You didn't beg, you didn't bargain, you didn't try to convince them of your worth. You simply withdrew, not out of anger, but out of clarity. And now that you've stopped reaching, stopped explaining, stopped reacting, they feel something they didn't expect to feel, the pull. But here's the twist. It's not because you're trying to pull them back, it's because you pulled back from them. That vacuum, that absence, is magnetic, it's powerful, and it's driving them wild. They don't understand it at first. They wonder why they're thinking about you more now than when you were right in front of them. Why the memories are louder, the silence heavier, the distance suddenly unbearable. It doesn't make sense to them because in their mind, they thought they had time. They thought you'd always be around, always available, always emotionally accessible. But that access has been revoked, not with drama, but with dignity. You see, people always return to the place where they once received unconditional love, but they rarely return with the same energy. They come back hoping the door is still unlocked, that your heart still glows when you see their name, that after everything you'll still be there waiting. But this time, you're not. This time something's different. You're not bitter, you're not angry, you're just unavailable. They don't miss you because you stopped texting. They miss you because you stopped needing them. Your detachment wasn't a threat, it was a transformation. You healed, re-entered, and got your power back. And now you don't need their attention, their validation, or their "what are you doing?" messages that come at 2 a.m. when they're bored and lonely. You're not that person anymore. Now you're focused, you're busy building. You've stopped checking their updates. You've stopped wondering if they care. You've stopped rewriting your worth based on their ability or inability to love you right. And that's when it happens. That's when they crawl back because the energy that once chased now radiates and they can feel it. Let me give you a picture. Imagine you're a light. When you're chasing someone, that light is behind them. They can't see it clearly. But when you stop chasing and just stand still, suddenly that light is in their face. Blinding, beautiful, undeniable. That's what your energy has become. It's no longer chasing shadows. It's shining so bright that now they can't look away. But let's be clear, just because they come back doesn't mean they've changed. Sometimes they return because they miss the benefits, not because they're ready to match your energy. That's where your growth has to speak louder than your loneliness. Because the old you would have jumped at the chance, would have replied with excitement, would have taken breadcrumbs and called it a meal. But not anymore. You've evolved. You don't need closure, you don't need answers, and you definitely don't need someone whose presence was always conditional on your silence, your shrinking, your suffering. You've replaced needing them with knowing yourself. You've turned the pain into power, the silence into strength, and your detachment. It's not a wall, it's a mirror, one they now have to look into and ask themselves, Why they couldn't value you when you were standing right there. Now they text. Now they check in. Now they throw hooks into the water, hoping to get a bite. But you've stopped swimming in that sea. You're on land now, grounded, focused. You've built a life they no longer know how to access. Not because you hate them, but because they no longer belong in the version of you that you fought to become. Say it with me. I don't need them. Say it again, like you believe it now, like you've broken free, like you've come home to yourself. Now go write it in the comments. Let it be known. Let them see it. Let yourself see it. You don't need them anymore. So let's bring it all together, my friends. You didn't lose them. You found yourself. Your silence wasn't a punishment. It was a turning point. And now you're not chasing. You're not explaining. You're evolving. Let them sit with their regret while you rise in your power. Because the moment you let go, everything changed. Say it one last time. I choose me. Drop it in the comments. If this message spoke to you, like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more truth like this. Stay with me. The strongest version of you is still on the way.